I practice this crazy thing called functional medicine, which is not so crazy when you think about the concept behind it, which is the root causes, and rather than suppressing pathways and diminishing biochemistry, what we want to do is take a step back, right? Just take a step back and understand why do people have specific issues so that we can actually incorporate specific protocols, right? Dietary changes, lifestyle changes, tracking devices such as continuous glucose monitors. We'll talk more about this this morning. But and I haven't really done a dedicated lecture on blood sugar. Maybe once. This might be the second or third time. I do talk a lot about blood sugar during my lectures because blood sugar is a strong underpinning behind autoimmunity. And there's not a lot of appreciation behind it, even though there's a lot of research that actually backs that up. And so what I want to do is bring more attention to why is your blood sugar regulation relating to autoimmunity? How is it, right, that when we have, right, remember, most people don't have type 2 diabetes. If you look at, right, so we're talking about blood sugar, right, and autoimmune disease. Okay, most people, when you look at their labs, they don't have type 2 diabetes, although there are tens of millions of Americans who have type 2 diabetes. Most Americans now, statistically, have insulin resistance, okay? So again, what we're really talking about is if this is the cell, right? If that's your cell, and if there's a receptor on the cell for insulin, okay, the point is that when you really start that whole digestive process, smelling food, tasting food, you're already neurologically signaling that pancreas to actually release insulin. Now, insulin is that hormone, right, that when you release it from the pancreas, okay, it's kind of this like weird lumpy shaped organ over here, right? It's going to release that hormone, and then that's going to dock at the receptor for insulin, right? So that's going to dock right here. Let's put that make that a different color. Okay. So that right here is going to dock, and the point is that again, as we're eating food, right, and our glucose, right? So this is glucose, right? Because fats, carbohydrates, proteins, they all break down into glucose. Right? And we'll talk more about what are carbohydrates that create problems versus what are good carbohydrates. I really think that there are categories of beneficial carbohydrates versus there are non-beneficial carbohydrates. And unfortunately, again, a lot of dietitians are being taught and recommended from the American Dietitian Association how to give people diabetes. If you look at the recipes that they're recommending, oatmeal for breakfast, orange juice. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? We have this thing called the glycemic index, and we know how people's blood sugar reacts to various foods. So depending on what you're consuming, right, your glucose level raises, and then as you get insulin, that signaling molecule, it's going to open up the cell, right, and allows it to go inside the cell. So why is that important? Because again, if you start to develop resistance to insulin, you have to increase the production of insulin. And so if you produce insulin, right, and you start to increase that, so if you raise this, right, guess what's going to happen? You start to change your physiology. This is why, and then part of that physiology change, really directly, again, when it comes to autoimmunity, is you start to produce inflammation. So one of these side effects of excess insulin, right, is that you increase inflammation, right? So those are molecules, TNF alpha, NF kappa, beta, right? Oxidative stress. And again, when you increase inflammation, you decrease your immune system's capacity. Again, craziness, right? 20 grams of refined sugars, 20 grams, okay? You might think that 20 grams is a lot. Again, a Coca-Cola, I believe, is like 43 grams of sugar, right? So a Coke, a regular 12-ounce Coke, is double that amount as far as sugar goes. And it's a completely different kind of sugar, right? It's high fructose corn syrup. But just for example, 20 grams, right, of a refined carbohydrate, that's going to impair it's going to physically impair your immune system for 7 hours. So that basically means that your white blood cells no longer work. No longer work. So again, if your white blood cells aren't working, guess what? You're not regulating your immune system, because your immune system is really actually, again, mainly your white blood cells. There are all sorts of different kinds, right? We've got T cells, cytotoxic T cells, regulatory T cells. We've got, and then B cells on top of that, right? So we have all these subtypes of immune cells, but you can't fight off infection. So again, when we look at the extreme side of this, right, the long-term downstream of this is that when people have become insulin resistant, they eventually develop metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome turns into type 2 diabetes, right? That's when you have magically your A1C is over a 6.4. That's your type 2. But guess what? We have type 1.5, we have type 3, we have all these different forms, and the vast majority of people are not type 2 diabetic, but they are insulin resistant. So how would you know if you have insulin resistance? First of all, right? Okay? Bloopy Baby, I'm DC, MSc, and then IFMCP. So those are my 3 credentials after my name. So again, how do you know if you have insulin resistance? The 2 significant symptoms that people display that's most indicative of insulin resistance is going to be fatigue after meals and craving sugar, especially after meals. Okay? Anybody dealing with fatiguing after meals? Hey man, I'm just like, I just kind of die after lunch. Like I just tank after lunch. That is insulin resistance, okay? Don't be ashamed of this, by the way, guys. We are all frail. Remember, we are strong because we are weak, and we are stronger because we actually admit that we have weakness. This whole like machismo thing of like denying that you have issues, that is weakness, right? Because you're denying that the human body, it does break down over time. It happens to everybody. But what is really powerful is knowing what your symptoms mean. You start to know what your symptoms mean. You start to say, well, gosh, now I know that I have a problem with this insulin resistance issue. I can take this head on. And again, you can go the easy route. You can take Ozempic, Mounjaro, Wegovy, right? They'll change your numbers, but what you don't realize is that up to 30% of the weight loss with your GLP agonists is muscle mass. So one of the things, guess what, that regulates your sensitivity to insulin is muscle mass. The thing that keeps you guys healthy, your brain healthy, is your muscle mass. The single greatest stimulator of neurologic function is actually gravity on your muscles. If you lose significant muscle mass, your brain atrophies faster. You're moving towards neurocognitive issues faster. That's one of the reasons why people with long-term type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance have a higher rate of dementia. So this is why this is no joke. This is a big deal. Whether you're utilizing the substrates that you're taking, whether you're utilizing the right kinds of foods, whether you have accurate and correct digestive processes, and whether or not, again, you have inflammation, right, will dictate whether or not your immune system is working. If you're chronically inflamed because your insulin is out of check, guess what? You're more susceptible to autoimmunity. And I'm going to talk some more about those mechanisms so you guys kind of, hopefully this starts to hit home. Because really, one of the biggest manifestations in women is not just, oh, I'm fatiguing after meals, I'm getting, sugar cravings after meals. It's that your menstrual cycle is irregular. You have polycystic ovarian syndrome. You have fibroids, fibrocystic breast disease, irregular menstrual cycles. You have breast tenderness. You have heavy menstrual cycles, clotting with your menstrual cycles, mood changes with your menstrual cycles. Bloopy baby, absolutely. So if you have amenorrhea, that can also be an indication. A lot of times people actually with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they don't cycle on a regular basis. Now again, that's because of this enzyme, right? That's called 5-alpha reductase. And so what happens is you start to sidetrack your hormones down this pathway, and women actually start to make more androstenedione and dihydrotestosterone. And what that means is you actually lose your normal estrogen regulation and feedback. So very commonly, they have very irregular cycles. That is not okay. That is an unhealthy thing. And that is the number one reason for infertility. But again, what your doctor is, again, this is what classic example of what your doctor is going to do. They'll give you, right, spironolactone for the hair issue or the acne issue, right? Or the, again, facial hair or really actually hair thinning. They'll give you spironolactone for that and metformin, which makes your pancreas work harder. And not once will they actually measure your insulin. You guys, right? Insulin has to be measured. You have to measure your insulin to know where it's at. So if you want to know, like, do you have insulin resistance, would it not logically make sense to know where is your insulin right now? Right? There it is. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they give spironolactone out like it's candy, right? They give metformin out like it's candy. 12 months of metformin is almost guaranteeing you a B12 deficiency. So what happens a lot of times, right, when people know they're insulin resistant, their doctors diagnose them, and maybe they have type 2 diabetes, and then there's these weird tingly symptoms that you start getting. Or maybe you start to feel like there's like a covering on your hand, or you feel like there's like a rolled up sock on underneath your foot. That's neuropathy, right? But the question is it the blood sugar that's causing neuropathy, or is it the B12 deficiency? On top of that, here's what makes it worse, right? Your doctor knows typically what the symptoms of B12 deficiency are. Their headaches, their brain fog, their fatigue, but then a lot of times there's what we're called paresthesias. So paresthesias come in a lot of different forms. I was mentioning some of the symptoms of paresthesias. But what they do incorrectly is they only measure your B12. Okay? Your serum B12 is not the best marker for measuring your inside cellular level of B12. If you want that, it's actually called methylmalonic acid. MMA is the best test marker we have for reflection of B12 inside the cell. That's where you're using B12. Frankie, welcome to the club. Frankie just subscribed, right? So guys, again, this is what I'm doing, right? I do these lectures to make sure I'm teaching you guys to help really call out obvious things to me, help you guys understand your symptoms, but it's the systems that are driving that. I want you guys to, I want everyone to have optimal health. I want everyone to thrive. You guys are all children of God, right? And I'm called to serve you guys. I have been called to serve. I've been serving for 15 years, and I will continue to serve, right? Now, there's definitely people out there that don't like that I'm serving. They don't like that I give free information out. They don't like that I'm actually helping people to go back to their doctors and get off medications. But again, there's nothing wrong with medications if you're using them correctly, but most people, unfortunately, are never taught that there's a different way. There is a different way in most of these circumstances, in autoimmunity, right? In Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, in lupus, right? In the fact that, again, people are being just medicated for many times lifestyle-related issues. There's an old saying, right? When exercise and diet don't work, what do they say? When exercise doesn't work, when exercise and diet doesn't work, you've got drugs, right? Maria, we'll talk about hypertension here in a second. When exercise and diet don't work, try exercise and diet. Okay? Because again, what most physicians are not educated in is basic physiology around how you need to have optimal diet, optimal digestion, optimal, right? Look at that. Enjoy the baseline. Subscribed as well. Welcome. So guys, just my subscribers, I think it's $9 or $10 a month. When I see you guys and you ask questions, I'm going to preferentially answer your questions as well. Okay, so I'll do my best as far as getting back to you guys. But again, just to slow this down for a second, right? There's nothing wrong with having a doctor on board when you're in crisis. If you guys aren't going to change your lifestyle and you have dyslipidemia, if you have high blood pressure, there is nothing wrong, right, in taking that approach. But my issue is that you're not being given the option that there might be something different. It takes work. It is a lifestyle. You have to invest your money in it because, again, it's not covered by insurance, right? Again, unless you're type 2 diabetic, you're not going to get a continuous glucose monitor. But it's mind-blowing to me that people that have symptoms and signs, obviously, of insulin resistance, right? They have sleep irregularities, they have anxiety, they have weight gain, they have hypertension, they've got dyslipidemia, right? They've got swelling in their lower extremities. They're fatigued all the time. They're stiff all the time. They're depressed. All of the constellation of symptoms around insulin resistance. You don't want to go out and do things, with your family. But yet, you have to be completely broken for somehow insurance to cover a continuous glucose monitor. That's insane. That's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again. Do the same thing. Okay, come in for the office visit. Great. Let's modify your medication. Oh, we're going to up your insulin dosage. Oh, we're going to give you more of your metformin. Oh, wait, you're maxed out on your metformin, but you have neuropathy, so we're going to give you gabapentin. You guys, I'm telling you the scenario of what's happening to modern America because I've been seeing it for the past 15 years in my clinical practice. But I can't tell you how many clients, I've lost track of the clients that have gotten off of blood pressure medications, are no longer on metformin, have lost weight, have their brain back, right? Because they're making the right lifestyle choices. And again, a huge part of this was like what I just said, was refined carbohydrates are a huge problem. But anything from this lecture? I hope you guys are learning something. Give me some feedback, right? So, Ray, I try not to comment on medications in the sense, is it good or bad? Because it really depends on the person. The problem is that gabapentin is off-label medication, right? For a completely different issue. It's an epilepsy medication, and they're using it off-label. Again, 40% of medications that are cut in this country are off-label. That means there's no demonstrated efficacy and scientific basis for the usage of those medications. They do change symptoms, but again, what you're doing is you're dulling down the reception of pain signals, which is why you're also feeling brain fog and fatigue on your gabapentin. Okay? So it's going to help you not feel the pain. The pain doesn't go away. The inflammation is not going away. Don't be confused here, right? In fact, again, most pain relieving medications have significant side effects. So I actually, I probably for about 5 years, I ran a neuropathy clinic. And when I had a physical office, we did neuropathy day in and day out. And again, it's butchery, because again, it's either mask the symptoms or eventually start using like spinal stimulators, right? Nerve blocks. You start burning nerves off. That's how people manage these issues. It's butchery, in my opinion. Instead of actually trying to help the neuron heal, figure out why people are insulin resistant. In fact, one of the most common reasons why people actually have developed insulin resistance is they have something called dysbiosis. okay? Dysbiosis just means you have an inappropriate ratio of good to bad bacteria in the gut. Now again, ask yourself, how many people have taken antibiotics in this live, right? Have you had numerous rounds of antibiotics? Guess what you just did? You ruined the beneficial bacteria in your gut. What do the beneficial bacteria in your gut do? A lot, but one of the things they do is they regulate inflammation. So one of the things that actually drives insulin resistance, right? This inability for that insulin to dock on the cell is if you have a lot of inflammation on the receptor. So those people that have elevated C-reactive protein, guess what? You are going to be more insulin resistant. Some people are going, well, I've never had my C-reactive protein level tested. Well, you should, and you should be testing high sensitivity, right? Nurse Britt, type 1 diabetics, love working with them, right? Currently on a CGM and an insulin pump, and good. So you're managing that piece. But again, what happens is type 1 diabetics are very commonly insulin resistant. So usually what we find with what we do in functional medicine, they actually will decrease, and this is not what I'm doing. I'm sending people back to their doctor, right, to do this. But again, usually about 80% of the clients that are type 1s, they actually tend to, hey, another subscriber, right on. They tend to actually go back to their doctor and reduce their insulin. Although, again, their insulin pump should be reducing that on its own, okay? But the point is, again, if you have less inflammation in your gut, if you're digesting and breaking down your food, if you're not malabsorbing carbohydrates, which is incredibly inflammatory and produces insulin resistance, right? So again, is anybody dealing with gas and bloating? Gas and bloating after meals? Is that someone give me some feedback on that. Okay, a lot of people. So the fascinating thing, right, is that the issue of gas and bloating, right, especially when you guys eat carbohydrates, okay, and if you're getting gas and bloating with that, that is a red flag that there is dysbiosis. What I mean by that is that if you're not breaking your carbohydrates down, which requires an enzyme from the pancreas called elastase, okay? If you're not breaking down your carbohydrates, right, in your gut, they get further down the GI tract. That means they ferment, and that means you start to produce gas because there's negative bacterial species that are growing, right? They're using that as a substrate. So they're growing themselves, and they're producing gas. Well, but then you're bloated. You're like, damn, like I'm 9 months pregnant. Like this is crazy. Like I got to undo my belt here. And usually that bloating gets worse as the day goes on. Anybody? Anybody? That's a bacterial colony issue. You guys, if you have dysbiosis, you have more inflammation. If you have more inflammation, guess what? You need more insulin. So you actually theoretically are producing more insulin resistance. But the crazy thing is that literally, right, we're talking about a gut mechanism that is promoting insulin resistance. When's the last time your doctor sat down with you and talked to you about your gut health? Let me answer that for you. Goose eggs. They're like, I mean, maybe you're lucky if you get like a dietary consult, and if they're, you know, worthy, hopefully there at some point someone would sit down with you and look at a dietary journal. What are you eating? I want to know, what are you guys eating in the morning? I want to hear it. What are you guys eating? What's your breakfast in the morning? Camel Slayer, the war pig. There's a huge connection between Hashimoto's and SIBO, okay? Eggs, toast. Nothing. People skip oats. Some people are fasting. Oh, bacon and eggs. Love it. Coffee. Okay? Come on, someone say it. Bloody Mary. If it's Sunday. It's either mimosas or Bloody Mary. I know people are drinking their breakfast on Sundays. Okay, you guys are going out to brunch, right? English muffin. Okay. And here's the deal. I'm not against fasting, guys. I'm really not, right? What I find interesting is when people start to use these continuous glucose monitors, and you'll actually start to realize how your diet is impacting your blood sugar. There's no two ways around that way. By the way, these are in our bio, in our link tree. You guys can grab these. You can get a 1 month, a 3 month, and a 6 month membership. But when you buy these, it's a year that you get use of this, and then each sensor is $75. It's a little pricey, I'll admit that, but the information is life-changing. So what I tell people is, yes, it's an investment for these devices, but you don't necessarily need to use them the rest of your life if you know what you're eating, okay? So again, here's the deal. The number one way for you guys to actually regulate your blood sugar, okay? This will be my biggest tip that I'm gonna give you guys on your diet this morning, okay? Let's actually go through it, right? Because we're just talking about, hey, what are you guys eating for breakfast? So let's talk about that. Why is it so important? What sets the tone, right, for the rest of the day and the night? Because one of the triggers you guys may or may not be aware of, those people that have chronic anxiety, that have insomnia, and especially are anxious when they wake up in the middle of the night. That is classic insulin resistance. That's insulin resistance promoting insomnia. And I'm gonna talk about that. But if you guys are dealing with sleep problems, please, in the next 5 minutes, I'm gonna hit on that subject. And hopefully, again, you're gonna have your brain blown, right? Your mind should be shattered as you start to listen to this, because as you realize that your blood sugar may be causing your insomnia, what does that mean? Like, you guys just gave 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes to a live presentation, right? And if you start to realize that your sleep quality is tied to your blood sugar and you correct that, how good do you feel when you guys wake up with real deep sleep? Like amazing, like that when you wake up as a kid and be like, yeah, let's go, let's kick some ass, right? That's not happening for a lot of people right now. So again, the next 5 minutes, we're gonna talk about that, all right? Okay, again, and if you're falling asleep after eating, you are insulin resistant, guaranteed. And Wegovy and Ozempic and Mounjaro are not going to fix that, all right? So here, okay, so when we look, right, at what's available as far as hormones go, right? Okay, so we're gonna call, that is gonna be cortisol, right? And then we're gonna let's do red, is gonna be insulin, okay? So, as far as cortisol and insulin goes, those levels in general fluctuate during the day. So if we look at cortisol, okay, cortisol, when you wake up, it's actually at a fairly low level, but then it's gonna spike, and then it's gonna come back down, and it's gonna then slowly raise back up into the evening. So that's your cortisol rhythm right there, okay? You need to spike your cortisol in the morning. It's a healthy mechanism. It's called the cortisol activation response, the CAR, C-A-R, okay? So we need that to happen. If you guys are feeling beat up in the morning, if you can't roll out of bed, if life sucks in the morning and I have to have my coffee, don't talk to me before my coffee. If you're that kind of person, you really may be struggling in your spike of AM cortisol. Now, what does cortisol do to the insulin receptor? Remember, we were talking about this cell, right? And there's a receptor for insulin. What does cortisol do to the receptor? Just take a Vivance and go back to bed. Oh boy. Yeah, I know, but again, a lot of you guys are taking sleeping medication, right? Ambien, Lunesta, Tylenol PM. And then when that doesn't work, it's Trazodone. Anybody taking Trazodone? Yeah, well, those are all connected to dementia risk. And none of your doctors have told you that there's significant research showing the longer you take, right, Benadryl, diphenhydramine, right, the longer you take antihistamines, the longer you take sleeping medication, the higher your risk for dementia. Uh-oh, whoops. Now this just got real because, again, I'm talking to you guys about how we want to stabilize your blood sugar during the day to improve the sleep quality at nighttime. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with that have insomnia. And again, we do one-on-one work with people when they're ready to change, when they're ready to take supplements, when they're ready to actually really be led through the process of looking at your physiology rather than just focusing on just your labs and trying to treat your labs instead of treating the person who has labs. Okay? So again, cortisol sensitizes the receptor to insulin, except if you have, again, an abnormally regulated cortisol rhythm. So if your cortisol is off, guess what's going to happen? You become, again, resistant at the receptor to insulin. So if your cortisol, right, if let's call this about 10 a.m., and you're spiking your cortisol, this is the worst time to consume carbohydrates during the day. By far. And there's been research studies that literally just restrict carbohydrates in the AM. And guess what? Cortisol rhythms improve. Sleep quality improves. Weight loss occurs. Energy increases. Heck no, no Red Bull for breakfast. Because again, guess what also antagonizes cortisol? Caffeine. So here's the deal, guys. Caffeine genetically, right, is actually, for some people, no big deal. My wife can consume coffee before she goes to bed. If I consume coffee before I go to bed, I'm a slow metabolizer. So I get jittery, I get shaky, I'm jacked up, right? My adrenaline is surging as well, and my sleep is going to be off. But what I'm saying is that actually your insulin levels will actually slowly increase in the second half of the day. Sorry, that's the wrong color. Okay? So again, when should you be consuming carbohydrates if you're going to consume them? You don't have a lot of insulin in the AM. And if you overload your carbohydrates in the AM, usually, a lot of times what's going to happen is you'll surge insulin at that point. So you actually excrete too much insulin. So your blood sugar will go like this, and then boom, and then it drops back down. So guess what? Mid-morning, you already want a sugary Starbucks drink. You want more carbohydrates. You're already getting sugar cravings at that point, right? A turmeric, look, if it was a coconut turmeric latte, that would be a lot better, right? Good fat. You get medium chain triglycerides, MCT, right? Medium chain triglycerides is a phenomenal fat derived from coconut products. There's other things that like palmitic acid. There's other things that actually you can get MCT oil from. But I think coconut is probably the best thing as far as from like an environmental perspective. But yes, we want to consume, again, fat and protein in the AM predominantly. Again, you don't have to have a continuous glucose monitor to see how this works, but you guys need to stop eating oatmeal in the morning. You need to stop eating pastries in the morning. You need to stop eating bagels in the morning. You need to stop eating toast in the morning. It is wrecking your blood sugar. And again, guess what happens? If you actually, again, are consuming that sugar, right, throughout the day, and you're not absorbing it, you're not breaking it down, again, especially a lot of people, they already have digestive issues, right? Diarrhea, constipation, reflux, like gastroesophageal reflux disease, right? GERD symptoms, that reflux-related symptom. Again, gas and bloating after meals, guys, that's inflammation in your gut. That's promoting insulin resistance just by itself. But if again, what you're consuming, depending on the time of day, is incorrect, you're also promoting insulin resistance, and then this is what happens. At night, right, your blood sugar is going up and down and up and down, and then again, you get into bed, you go to sleep, and then eventually again, it comes down, right? And at some point, you have to secrete adrenaline to lift your blood sugar up. And you wake up and you're anxious. You wake up and you're like, wow, I'm wide awake. What should I do? Well, let's get on TikTok. Or I should go vacuum. Or you're like, I guess I'm not going to bed, right? Trish, yes. So Trish, animal protein. Like, what should you eat in the morning, right? Animal protein. Bacon. Bacon's got cholesterol. I already have cholesterol issues. Is anybody terrified of bacon? You guys, you need to be terrified of the sugar in the bacon, the nitriles, and the nitrates. There's a brand of bacon. I should be a spokesperson for this brand because I use it so much and I talk about it a lot. It's called Tasty. It's just thick cut bacon. That's it. There's nothing added to it. There's all these people out there that think that like, oh, red meat kills you. I'm like, dude, all the nutritional research that's being done around red meat typically is actually like a bun is sandwiched on the outside of that burger. And they're like, oh, everyone with red meat's dying. And I'm like, or what about like the cured meats that you're eating? That is inflammatory to your small intestine and your large intestine. So stop putting the preservatives in your bacon. Start eating real food. Because again, all those things, right, that is promoting dysbiosis in the gut. That is death to your colon, these preservatives. But bacon is not going to elevate your blood sugar. Bacon is going to stabilize your blood sugar, which means you don't need as much insulin. Which guess what? When your insulin levels come down, your lipids come down. The reason why your guys' cholesterol is elevated is not genetics most of the time. I call complete and total BS. There are genetic related issues, folks. And if you have a triglyceride of a 1200, yes, there's a genetic component to this. But what most people actually have is their cholesterol's here and their triglyceride is starting to actually either approach their cholesterol or it's exceeding their cholesterol. That is a self-induced, insulin-resistant glycemic event. Your triglycerides increase as you become more insulin resistant because it makes you produce more triglycerides. You start laying down your carbohydrate as fat. Fat is not to be feared, right? It is to be utilized. But we want healthy fats. We want avocados. We want lean, high-quality cuts of meat. We want organ meats. We want, again, monounsaturated fatty acids, right? We want olive oil, and we want to stay away from like the seed oils. Okay, so that was a long tangent. I'm going to check in with you guys. But hopefully this has been helpful. I need you guys to understand that, again, the symptoms that you're having, the anxiety or the insomnia or the fact that you have an elevated A1C or you're gaining weight, you can't control it, like you're yo-yoing, right? This is not about just going and filling a Wegovy or an Ozempic or a Mounjaro script. This is about looking at your biochemistry, understanding what your lifestyle is, making the right adjustments to your diet, exercise, sleep, stress, right? Stress, cortisol, insulin, okay? All of these factors play a role in how we function as a high-performance machine. If you don't give your body the right fuel and stimulation, you will always get a poor outcome. But it is actually not incredibly hard to give your body what it's looking for and then observe the changes. Watch your energy levels increase. Watch your pain levels come down, right? Watch your insulin levels come down. Watch your sleep improve. Like, all you're gonna need is just a Fitbit, and you can actually watch that objectively, how your sleep will improve if you actually start to regulate your blood sugar. Whoa, Ordinary Girl. Listen to Ordinary Girl right there. She lost 3 stone in 4 months eating what I recommend. Yeah, so paleo Mediterranean. Again, really guys, mainly what I just tell people is that, hey, look, you gotta eat nutrient dense. You gotta cut refined crap out of your diet. Let's not make this more complicated. In fact, if you guys want a 3-day a dietary plan, so I give there's a 3-day dietary plan that's in my link tree. It's in my bio. And if you guys want information on that, just go into my bio and then you can punch in your email and we'll send you a 3-day dietary guide, okay? I also have it's like a 4-page handout on healing leaky gut. Leaky gut is this crazy phenomenon that happens where literally your gut tissue, it breaks down and you become permeable and you allow stuff to get through your gut tissue. So again, people that are getting gas and bloating after meals, yes, you're probably malabsorbing carbohydrates. You're not breaking it down, right? You're fermenting. But SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, is probably one of the most common mechanisms that drives leaky gut, right? So if you have gas and bloating after meals, there's a very good chance, if this has been going on for a while, you do have leaky gut. If you have leaky gut, that is one of the 4 required mechanisms that drives and causes autoimmunity. Genetic predisposition, environmental factors, triggers leaky gut. There are approximately 100 autoimmune conditions. Every single one of those autoimmune conditions, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, right? Wegener's, all of them are connected through your mucosal system and especially a breach in that barrier. That's not me saying that. That is at the highest level peer-reviewed research saying that. That's doctors like Alessio Fasano, Vojdani, Karazian, right? Schoenfeld. These are the giants producing this research. But guess what? You guys have probably never heard of those researchers if you are into academia, because there's no drugs attached to fixing leaky gut. There has not been a single medical trial that has shown success in healing leaky gut from a pharmaceutical. And there's literally been over 100 failed medical trials trying to figure out how do we fix leaky gut. Because they know at the highest level that if they can find that drug to cure leaky gut, guess what? There's already almost 30 cancers associated with leaky gut as well. So this is a big, big deal money-wise for the pharmaceutical industry. And there's many, many more of these medical trials in the pipe. But it's hilarious because they fail. And so again, what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to take some of that, of your health into your own hands, because your doctor's gonna, again, give you the pill for the ill. If you guys don't want that approach, this is why I recommend functional medicine, okay? I'm glad you guys like this information. I should do this more often. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's just, is it the hat? Maybe it's the hat today. My hat's matching my scrubs. No, but I'm a little bit fired up, right? Because again, I see all these, it's so sad that people are going to social media and then you get like these huge runs on pharmaceuticals like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. And I'm not saying that nobody can benefit from that, but if you are losing muscle mass as an actual outcome of using a GLP agonist, and you're not aware that you're losing muscle mass, you have to wonder, again, why do they say you have to be on those drugs the rest of your life? Have you ever thought about that? Like, why do they tell people you got to be on this the rest of your life? Because as soon as you come off of the drugs, right, guess what happens to your weight? Well, okay, it's money too. That's a good point, right? It's certainly money. But yeah, I mean, that's been a huge windfall for that pharmaceutical company, right? Angela, lots of different reasons as far as why SIBO is there and how you approach that. Remember, there's hydrogen SIBO, methane SIBO. Some people actually have dysbiosis. They have symptoms of SIBO, but you've had a SIBO test and it's negative. So again, guys, always, before I start protocols on people as far as the gut goes, I'm always gonna run one of these. It's called a GI map. This is a PCR test. It shows you what's replicating inside the gut. This, outside of blood work, This is my number 2 favorite test of all time. My number 1 test, honestly, guys, is just blood work. It's just really good labs. Like we run over 80 markers on our initial blood panel. Comes back to us in about 4 days. And that's what I use to sit down with my initial consult when I'm talking to people, which, guess, by the way, it's $350. If you guys can find a highly trained functional medicine practitioner who gives you the volume of blood work and they are cheaper than $350, go see them. But guess what? They're probably really busy. And we are too. And we're still taking clients right now. But what I'm saying, right, is that I'm here to educate you guys about, hey, why is it valuable to use some of these specialty labs? Why would you want to, again, spend money on this outside of what insurance covers? Because insurance doesn't cover a test like this. And if you go to your GI doctor, most gastroenterologists don't even run stool tests, which is insane. They want to do a scope, upper endoscopy, a colonoscopy, which, yes, you can find things with that, but it's a macroscopic view. It's not the microscopic inflammatory view of what's really going on. Okay? Nurse Britt, yeah, you can grab a discovery call if you want, or you can grab that new patient consultation. And again, type 1 diabetes, right? Again, I'm not going to promise you anything that I can't do. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get you your pancreas back, but the majority of the clients that I work with type 1, they're moving towards typically more inflammatory issues, other autoimmune diseases. They have other comorbidities, right? They have insulin resistance because there's a better way, a more efficient way of making sure that you are using the least amount of insulin for the maximum impact. I mean, that's what our body does. It is responding in real time, and we are better than any insulin pump that has ever been made, right? So when we have to, utilize a man-made device, there's going to be limitations behind that. Ali Mack, gastroparesis is one of the most common manifestations of insulin resistance. We see gastroparesis clients almost on a weekly basis. Second, probably most common cause behind gastroparesis would be B12 deficiency. Again, you guys stop measuring your B12. You need to be measuring, like I said, methylmalonic acid. That is the biochemical, one of the precursors for the formation of cobalamin, right? And so again, if you're not utilizing cobalamin, right? Methylcobalamin is what you should be taking, by the way, not cyanocobalamin, but that test right there, right? Way more sensitive when it comes to a B12 deficiency. So Cougar, beautiful love. Your doctor refuses to do the insulin test because I have normal A1C and glucose. And they are so absolutely wrong. So I want to talk about that, guys. This may be the last thing I can talk about, but it's a really important concept to understand. How is it that, right, you can have a normal A1C or a normal glucose and yet still have all the symptoms of insulin resistance, like fatiguing after meals, or you're chronically fatigued, right? Or you've been put on Lipitor, or you are taking blood pressure medications, or you can't manage your weight. Like there's so many different manifestations, right, of insulin resistance. But how is it that, like, I'm not showing symptoms of it or signs of it? Signs is a better word, right? Because that's related to objective lab work. And this is exactly why. So I'm gonna talk to you guys about that. I want to teach you this point because everyone here needs to measure their insulin. Everyone. You need to know where your insulin level's at, okay? So let's talk about that. Last topic here. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and take this lecture, guys, and I'm going to turn this into a full presentation. So if there's anybody who actually wants this lecture, actually wants to come back and listen to this lecture, I just need you to email info@drautoimmune.com, okay? And so I'm actually going to, we're about 50, 55 minutes talking about blood sugar physiology, and I'm just getting such a good feedback from you guys today that I know that there's people out there that really need this information. So again, I'll load this lecture up to YouTube. All you got to do is email info@drautoimmune.com. I'll load that up as soon as possible, but it may not be till next week before we send you the link to then listen to this lecture, okay? If you guys have any feedback for me, please just let me know. You guys can always DM me. You guys can always ask questions. So again, remember, right? Blood sugar physiology, up and down. We need insulin, right? As blood sugar goes down, we need cortisol, okay? Adrenaline as blood sugar's low, But what's going to happen, right, is that as your blood sugar goes up, obviously so does your insulin, right? And so your insulin should theoretically be fasting less than a 5.0. But if your average blood sugar, right, is coming up, what are you going to do? You're going to pour more insulin on. And so as this process happens, as you're fluctuating with your blood sugar over and over and over again, as you're becoming more resistant to insulin at the cellular level, you need more and more and more to get the same output, meaning keeping your blood sugar stable. So your A1C can be a 5.2, and I've seen last year I had a young kid. This kid was 11 years old, 12 years old. He had a 97 on his insulin, fasting. I tested that kid for type 1 diabetes. I was worried that that kid was losing his pancreas, his beta cells. Luckily, he wasn't, but this kid actually was autoimmune. So I was like, wow, he already has one autoimmune condition. Maybe he actually has already type 1 as well, and it just wasn't being diagnosed because his emotional symptoms were so extreme highs and lows. So again, I don't have a lot of time to talk about autoimmune mechanisms, but one of those is in young Caucasian females, right? Very emotional Caucasian females, right? That have either already one form of autoimmunity, such as Hashimoto's, maybe they have lupus, maybe they have RA. There's a very good chance that they have something called GAD65 antibodies. So if you're seeing a girl with extreme anxiety, very skinny, right? Her blood sugar is fluctuating a lot during the day, I want to rule out type 1 diabetes right there. And that's I would want to run not just an insulin antibody, not just a beta cell antibody, but a GAD65. Okay? So again, what's going to happen? Again, you can keep your A1C normal, but it's at the expense of a high level of insulin. So the problem is, right, is that who's measuring your insulin? No one. Insulin is what's, again, causing the elevated lipids. Insulin is going to cause vasoconstriction. Your blood pressure is going to go up. Insulin causes, right, fat cells. Fat cells make estrogen. When you change the ratio of testosterone to estrogen or progesterone to estrogen, guess what? Interleukin 17 increases and you suppress your immune system. Autoimmune disease, right there. And it happens every single day throughout this entire country. And medical doctors are oblivious. Your rheumatologist is oblivious. Your endocrinologist is oblivious to these patterns. And it sickens me. Because the reality is, by lifestyle changes, by correct supplementation, by looking at specialty labs, by tracking your progress over time, by utilizing continuous glucose monitors, you will see how you are self-sabotaging. You will see if your lifestyle works for you or if your lifestyle doesn't. But again, instead of teachers, which is what doctor means, we have pill pushers. And we have people who would rather just fill scripts. Because you know what happens to doctors who don't fill scripts? They don't make bonus. Oh, mic drop. It's true. We laugh because it's true, and we laugh because it's sad. And you can have multiple truths at the same time, but this is the truth. Your physiology will always dictate how you feel on a daily basis. So you guys, I really appreciate everybody who's been here with me this morning. It's been super fun. Again, like I said, if you want a copy of this presentation, info@drautoimmune.com. Like I said, these continuous glucose monitors, they're in my link tree, they're in my bio. If you guys want to go deeper into these root causes, all you got to do is grab a discovery call, right? And that's, again, that starts the process of where, again, we're going to ask you questions if you're a good fit for care. Are you willing to change your diet? You willing to take supplements, right? Are you motivated? Those are really our 3 criteria. We're going to get you a blood work panel if you want to do one-on-one consulting, right? And then what's going to happen is I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to give you the most comprehensive evaluation you've ever had in your life. I will work harder for you than any other doctor you've had in your life. I will design a custom care plan as a way to help you show you, right, as far as your systems and then what we have to do to change those systems so your symptoms will improve too. So again, you guys, anything else that you need from me? Remember, again, there's that 3-day guide that we have for recipes in our bio, in our link tree. We have that Healing Leaky Gut guide is just out, hot off the press right now too. And again, I appreciate everyone for coming in and hanging out on this Friday morning. You guys are busy people. And if there's anything else I can do, again, my job here is to teach you guys. So just reach out. Again, my name is Dr. Ian. This has been another session with Dr. Autoimmune. And until next time, let your health soar.